Imagine this. It is 1995. The internet is growing quickly. Millions of web pages are appearing. But there is a problem. Finding the information you need is difficult. You can visit websites. You can explore directories. You can use early search engines. But finding the best answer can take time. Then, two university students begin working on an idea. Their names are Larry Page and Sergey Brin. And their project will eventually change the way billions of people find information. That project will become Google. Today, we are going to discover the incredible story of Google. A story about search engines, advertising, email, maps, smartphones, video, artificial intelligence, and one very ambitious mission. And while we explore this story, you are also going to practice your English. So how did Google begin? Let's travel back to Stanford University in California. In 1995, Larry Page was considering studying at Stanford. Sergey Brin was already a student there. According to Google's own history, Sergey was asked to show Larry around the university. Interestingly, they did not immediately agree about everything. But soon, they discovered that they worked well together. At the time, the World Wide Web was becoming enormous. More websites meant more information. But more information also created a new problem. How could a search engine decide which pages were important? Larry and Sergey began studying this question. They developed a system that looked at links between websites. The basic idea was clever. Imagine that many important websites link to the same page. Perhaps that page is also important. Instead of only looking at the words on a website, their system could study relationships between pages. Their first search engine had a very different name. Backrub. Yes, Backrub. Fortunately, that name did not last forever. Later, they changed it to Google. The name was inspired by the mathematical word Google. A Google is the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. The name represented something enormous, and that matched their ambition. Larry and Sergey wanted to organize huge amounts of information and make that information useful and accessible. But Google was still only a university project. There was no giant headquarters, no Gmail, no YouTube, no Android, no Google Maps, and definitely no Gemini. Larry and Sergey worked from university rooms using computers and inexpensive equipment. But their search engine was getting attention. People liked it because it could often produce useful results quickly. More people started using Google, and investors began noticing the project. Then came an important moment. In August 1998, Andy Bechtolsheim, one of the founders of Sun Microsystems, gave Larry and Sergey a check for $100,000. Google Incorporated was officially born. The project needed an office, but not the kind of office you might imagine. Google's first office was a garage in Menlo Park, California. The garage belonged to Susan Wojcicki, who would later become an important Google executive and eventually CEO of YouTube. Think about that image. A company that would later become one of the most powerful technology businesses in the world was working from a garage. Computers, cables, a small team, and a very big idea. Google continued growing. The company hired engineers. It created a sales team, and more people began using its search engine. But there was an important question. How could Google make money? Search was useful, but running computers and hiring employees was expensive. Google needed a business model. Advertising became the answer. The company developed an advertising system connected to what people were searching for. For example, imagine you search for running shoes. An advertisement related to running shoes could appear near your search results. This was powerful because the advertisement was connected to the user's interest at that moment. Google could make money from advertising while keeping its search engine free for users. And as Google search became more popular, this advertising business became extremely valuable. But Google also needed to protect something important: trust. If people believed companies could simply pay to control normal search results, the search engine would become less useful. So Google separated advertisements from its regular search results. The company continued improving its technology. It also developed a culture that was different from many traditional corporations. Google became famous for colorful offices, unusual ideas, and experiments. Even its homepage was different. It was simple: a logo, a search box, and very little else. That simplicity became part of Google's identity. While other websites could feel crowded, Google wanted search to feel fast and direct. Type your question. Press search. Find information. Simple. By the early 2000s, Google was becoming much more than a university experiment. Millions of people were using the search engine. The company was growing rapidly, and the word Google was becoming part of everyday language. But Larry Page and Sergey Brin did not want to stop with search. They believed Google could organize many different types of information, and that idea would soon take the company into completely new areas. Then came 2004. Google introduced a new email service. It was called Gmail. At the time, many email services offered relatively small amounts of storage. Gmail offered 1 gigabyte. That was so unusual that some people thought the announcement was an April Fool's joke. But it was real. Gmail also made searching your emails fast and easy. Once again, Google was using search technology to solve another information problem. And 2004 brought another enormous change. Google entered the stock market. The company was no longer simply a successful private startup. It was becoming one of the most important technology companies in the world. But Google was only getting started. Soon, it would help people explore streets and cities. It would enter online video. It would create a web browser. And it would become one of the most important forces in the smartphone revolution. Google had learned how to organize the web. Now it was preparing to organize much more of our digital lives. After Gmail and Google's arrival on the stock market in 2004, the company entered a period of enormous expansion. Google search was already powerful, but Google wanted to help people find more than websites. What if you wanted to find a restaurant, a street, a city, or even see what a place looked like before visiting it? In 2005, Google introduced Google Maps. Today, opening a map on your phone feels completely normal. You can search for a location, find directions, check traffic, explore businesses, and discover places around the world. But digital maps were still developing rapidly in the early 2000s. Google saw another information problem. The world itself needed to become searchable. Later, Street View made the experience even more visual. People could explore streets using panoramic images. Suddenly, your computer could become a window into places thousands of kilometers away. But another internet revolution was beginning. Online video. Internet connections were becoming faster. Digital cameras were becoming more common. And people wanted an easy way to share videos online. A young company called YouTube was growing incredibly quickly. Google saw the opportunity. In 2006, Google agreed to buy YouTube for approximately $1.65 billion in stock. At the time, that sounded like an enormous amount of money for such a young company. But think about YouTube today. Music, education, entertainment, news, podcasts, gaming, and millions of creators. Even the video you are watching right now exists inside the world that online video helped create. Google had made a very important bet, but another revolution was coming. The smartphone. Google understood that people would not always search for information from a desktop computer. The internet was becoming mobile. In 2005, Google acquired a small company called Android. Android was developing software for mobile devices. Google eventually transformed Android into an operating system that different smartphone manufacturers could use. The first commercial Android phone arrived in 2008. This was important because Google was entering a new battle. Apple had introduced the iPhone in 2007. Smartphones were changing quickly. Google did not want the mobile internet to develop without its products and services. Android offered another path. Companies such as Samsung, HTC, Motorola, and many others could build phones using Google's mobile platform. Over time, Android became one of the world's most widely used operating systems. Google Search, Gmail, Maps, YouTube. Now these services could travel inside people's pockets. But Google was not finished. There was another important door to the internet, the web browser. At the time, Microsoft's Internet Explorer was extremely popular. Other browsers, such as Firefox and Safari, were also important. Then, in 2008, Google introduced Chrome. Why would a search company create a browser? Because the browser was where people experienced the web. Google wanted Chrome to be fast, simple, and designed for modern websites and web applications. Chrome grew quickly, and once again, Google became an important part of how people accessed information. Think about what was happening. Google was no longer only a website. It was becoming an ecosystem. Search helped you find information. Gmail handled communication. Maps helped you navigate. YouTube provided video. Android powered smartphones. Chrome connected people to the web. And advertising helped finance much of this enormous system. But rapid growth also created questions. How much information should one company control? Google knew what people searched for. Its services could know where users traveled. YouTube knew what videos people watched. Gmail managed enormous amounts of communication. And Android connected Google with billions of mobile devices. Privacy became an important discussion. Governments also began paying more attention to Google's power. Was Google becoming too dominant? Did competitors have a fair opportunity? These questions would continue for years. At the same time, Google was investing in projects that seemed very different from search. Self-driving cars, artificial intelligence, health technology, smart home devices, high-speed internet, and other experimental projects. The company was becoming so large that its structure was getting complicated. Then, in 2015, Larry Page announced a major change. A new parent company would be created. Its name was Alphabet. Google would become one company inside Alphabet. Why? The idea was to separate Google's main internet businesses from some of the company's more experimental projects. Google would continue managing products such as Search, YouTube, Android, Maps, Chrome, and advertising. Other projects could operate with more independence. One example was the self-driving car project that later became Waymo. And there was another major change. Sundar Pichai became CEO of Google. Pichai had joined Google years earlier and had worked on important products, including Chrome. Now he was responsible for leading one of the most influential technology companies in the world. Larry Page became CEO of Alphabet. Google had transformed again. It started as a search engine created by 2 university students. Then it became an advertising company, a mapping company, a video company, a mobile software company, a browser company, and part of a much larger technology organization. But behind all these products, another technology was becoming increasingly important. Artificial intelligence. Google had been researching AI for years. Machines were getting better at recognizing images, understanding language, translating text, and predicting what people wanted. Then Google made another important move. It acquired an artificial intelligence company called DeepMind. DeepMind would later demonstrate AI systems capable of solving problems that once seemed incredibly difficult. And as the world entered the 2020s, artificial intelligence would move from research laboratories into the daily lives of millions of people. Then a new generation of AI arrived. Systems that could write, create images, understand complex questions, and communicate with people using natural language. Suddenly, Google faced a fascinating challenge. For more than 20 years, Google had helped people search for answers. But what would happen if artificial intelligence could create an answer directly? The company that transformed internet search was about to face one of the biggest technological changes in its history. The company that transformed internet search was about to face one of the biggest technological changes in its history. To understand this new era, we need to return to artificial intelligence. Google had invested in AI research for many years, and one of its most important decisions was acquiring DeepMind. DeepMind was a British artificial intelligence company with an ambitious goal: create machines that could learn. In 2016, the world saw how powerful this technology could become. DeepMind created AlphaGo. AlphaGo was designed to play Go, an ancient and extremely complex board game. For years, many experts believed computers would need much more time to become truly excellent at Go. Then AlphaGo played against legendary player Lee Sedol. Millions of people watched. AlphaGo won 4 games to 1. It was an important moment for artificial intelligence. Machines were learning to solve problems that once seemed incredibly difficult. But Google was also using AI in products people already knew. Search, Google Photos, translation, Gmail, YouTube, Maps. Artificial intelligence could help recognize images, understand language, recommend videos, predict traffic, and organize information. Then, in 2019, another leadership change happened. Larry Page and Sergey Brin stepped away from their daily management roles. Sundar Pichai became CEO of both Google and Alphabet. The student project from Stanford was now a global technology organization. But a new challenge was coming. In the early 2020s, generative artificial intelligence became one of the biggest topics in technology. New AI systems could answer questions, write text, create images, understand documents, write computer code, and communicate using natural language. This created an unusual situation for Google. For decades, when people needed information online, many of them started with Google Search. They typed words into a box. Google showed links. Then the user selected a website. But generative AI offered another possibility. Ask a complete question and receive a direct answer. Suddenly, Google needed to rethink its most famous product. The company introduced Bard, an experimental conversational AI service. Later, Bard evolved into Gemini. Gemini became the name of Google's major family of artificial intelligence models and its AI assistant. The goal was much bigger than creating a chatbot. Google wanted AI across its ecosystem: Search, Gmail, Docs, Android, Chrome, Cloud, and many other products. Search itself began changing. Google introduced AI overviews. Instead of only showing traditional links, Search could use artificial intelligence to create a summary for some questions. Then came AI mode. With AI mode, people could ask longer and more complicated questions. They could also continue the conversation with follow-up questions. This was a major change. Remember Google's original search engine? You typed a few keywords. Google organized websites. Now imagine asking Google a complex question using normal language, images, files, or video. The relationship between people and search is changing. And in 2026, Google made its biggest change to the search box in more than 25 years. AI became much more central to the experience. Google says AI mode has already passed 1 billion monthly users. But artificial intelligence is not only changing search. Google Cloud has become another important part of the company. Businesses can use Google's computing infrastructure and AI technology to build their own products. DeepMind is also working on science. One famous example is AlphaFold. AlphaFold uses artificial intelligence to help predict the structures of proteins. Understanding proteins is important in biology and medicine. This shows another side of Google's AI ambitions. Not only helping people search for information, but helping researchers discover new information. However, Google's enormous size also creates difficult questions. Privacy, competition, advertising, the power of large technology companies, and the impact of artificial intelligence on jobs and information. Google faces competition from other major technology companies and new AI businesses. And perhaps its greatest challenge is unusual. Google must change the product that made Google successful. Search moved too slowly, and competitors may create a better way to find information. Move too quickly, and Google could change a business used by billions of people. So what is Google today? A search company? An advertising company? A video company because of YouTube? A mobile company because of Android? A cloud company? Or an artificial intelligence company? The answer may be all of them. Now, let's review some useful English words. A search engine is a system that helps people find information online. A browser is software used to visit websites. An acquisition happens when one company buys another company. Advertising means promoting products or services to customers. Artificial intelligence, or AI, allows computers to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. And an algorithm is a set of instructions a computer uses to solve a problem. Think about Google's journey. 2 students, a university project, a strange name called Backrub, then Google Search, Gmail, Maps, YouTube, Android, Chrome, Cloud, DeepMind, and Gemini. Google began by trying to organize the internet. Now it is trying to build artificial intelligence that can understand information, create answers, and help people complete increasingly complex tasks. What will Google look like 10 years from now? We don't know. But one thing seems clear. The way we find information is changing again, and Google is trying to change with it. Thank you for listening to Learn and Chat. Remember, today you did more than learn about Google. You also practice your English. Listen for the main ideas. Learn new words from context. And listen again when you can. Keep listening. Keep learning. Stay curious. And I'll see you in our next story.